right, we are all bundles of potential that manifest only in relationship. So this presentation is a completely custom cosmic experience, but it's grown off of one my partner and I, Audrey, have traveled and given a lot of Ecovillage presentations, and so I wish she was here. She was meant to be here, and I kept this slide as a homage to her and all the ways she's helped me in this process. So my intention with this presentation is basically kind of as I shared, so that I can give my gift more fully to our project here. And I feel like giving you backdrop of what I'm passionate and what I've learned can allow me to offer it more fully. So that, okay, where I've been. So as you might remember, I left Unicorn Castle back in November of 2016, and then have committed to a completely Ecovillage immersed wander, particularly around just North America, because I want to understand how our culture is interacting with this. So then through this network, I've got about 30 communities that I'm in like close relationship and dialogue with often, and then in my more global work, there's hundreds that we network with. And the feature today is going to be mostly on the rural communities, which I feel like I'm highlighting communities that I think have the most wisdom and allyship for our growth. So this is where I believe a lot of my wisdom and or a lot of my experience has been the Ecovillage network, the global Ecovillage network, and so I'm on the core team for the North America, and we do our annual Ecovillage conference, which is coming up in 4 weeks, and I do an Ecovillage podcast, and we present at festivals, and so that's kind of been really cool. This has in many ways been my consistent community for the past years. It's just been this small team of people who are as obsessed with Ecovillage culture as me. So we're like a little guild. And then I support myself with the tree slinging and have gotten incredibly passionate about natural building and tapping into all the ways to make things out of the space around you. These are the Christmas tree crew. So this is how I make my money for the year. On the streets of New York. And these people are like, yeah, my blood. And this is some of the natural building that I'm passionate about, and I feel like it's so potential to weave into community. You know, so got to do an artist in residency and build this yurt, and then I have someone who's trained me how to build this wigwam. You know, every iota of this shelter was built from things within a 1 mile radius of it. So that we make the rope out of tree bark, and we peel bark to create plywood out of solid pieces of bark, and bend the young saplings. And so it's just incredible to reconnect with what is it like to build your home out of your land. So one of the questions is, what is an ecovillage, right? And we leave that really open to a lot of interpretations, but it's nice to have something to root in. And the core of it is that you're sharing territory and you're sharing some resources. That can manifest in a lot of different ways, but the sharing is a really important part of the vulnerability that's so different from our kind of individual ownership paradigm. The next is to participatory self-governance. So everyone's involved in the decision making. They might be involved in different ways, but there's no like one landlord who is dictating everything and you're just paying them to tell you what to do. So that's an important part of it. And then to be an eco-village, you have to be doing active regeneration of the ecology, of some social dynamics, and trying to make a more holistic place for healing. And the simple way that we break it down when we're teaching about it is kind of your social dynamics, your cultural dynamics, economic dynamics, and ecological, and how to bring healing in each of those facets. So now we're going to do a little community tour and go and visit some communities together. There are kind of like the world is covered in like a measles amount of eco-villages. This is very wishful. Yeah, so there's a lot of attempts, and there's not a lot of actually sustaining villages. But I feel like even if these aren't all real, it's exciting to think that this many people have logged their project online because they're trying. So there's a lot of enthusiasm. So the general order of the presentation today is going to have, I'll introduce the communities, and then whenever there's an amazing part of the community, I'm going to highlight it with this crystal. So that's something that's like really inspiring, a glowing crystal. And then we'll go notice some of the challenges, so ways in which communities have made certain decisions about how to operate, and then kind of the consequences or the repercussions of those things. And then some of the insight nuggets, which is like things noticing oh, like look at how these are interacting and what comes out of that. And so a lot of this is just kind of observation level. So to start, one of the networks that I'm so passionate about working with is the Federation for Egalitarian Communes. And so this is a network of communes who have, and there's multiple steps to joining, but the first step is that you all collectively share basically all the resources on the land, including the land and income related to the land. And so this is it's like a big step for villages to do this, but there's parts of this, we can click, this has created this network where anywhere from 5 adults living together to 100 adults living together and sharing everything are now also sharing things between one another. So it's like a commune of communes. It's created an incredible opportunities, because as soon as you start sharing, there's a lot of sharing on that level can be very vulnerable. And so some of the perks they've created is their own healthcare system, right? And so this is, in a lot of the states, it's just so expensive to afford good healthcare, but they found that as this network of communities, if they each pitch in a little, every month it's like $5 per person. They've built up so much money that they now have their own healthcare system. And what that allows them to do is have that surplus money they can then loan out to other communities with 0 interest loan. And so they've kind of also created their own bank by networking together. The other part of this is that they also have their labor exchange currency. So through the network of the communes, part of the commune dues also get translated into being able to fund experts from one commune or experts from a whole bunch of the communes to descend on another one and do these big, maybe it's a garden party and they're harvesting sorghum, but it's a community of 5 and they need 50 people there to harvest all the sorghum, or they're coming for a barn raising. And so what these dues have allowed is that the communities who don't necessarily have a lot of money on their own, but have a lot of skill and a lot of enthusiastic people can have the travel expenses and food expenses paid to organize things that, like, this community was an incredible build together where we all came and helped renovate this barn to make it another living quarters. And otherwise this was just a community of 4 people, and they, also running a farm. And so there's no way they could have done this. But when kind of 15 of us builders from other communities came, we were able to, in 10 days, renovate the space. So it's a modern kind of barn raising through the labor exchange. This is some of the communes. This is an actual maypole for everyone who's wondering how to do it. A little further. So these are ones that I'm going to just cover real quick to show some of the insights of how they operate, because they're going to range everywhere from just 3 adults to over 100 people living there, and each of these have figured out how to make it work. So I spent a lot of my time in Central Virginia, because one of the incredible things there is they've also worked on not just becoming self-reliant with their food and self-reliant with their economy, but also self-reliant socially. And so what you experience out here, it's like fun to be rural, but it's like where it's hard to bike to something interesting, right? We're kind of stranded, and the closest thing we have is, you go out to the city now and then, but otherwise we're a little bit of like an island. And so what these communities have done, starting with Twin Oaks, all these other communities have sprouted up around it, and all of these are within biking distance of each other, and many of them have like little forest trails that you can connect from one to the other without ever really touching the road. And so they've now created like a village of villages. And Acorn is the anarchist community, so they throw the best parties. And Living Energy Farm is like a scientific research hub, and so they have all these wonderful classes. Cambia community has the best hot tub and cuddle sessions. And Twin Oaks has definitely like the biggest infrastructure. They have all the karaoke nights and the big feasts in their massive dining hall. So so this is a very special, I consider this kind of like university campus with a lot of experimentation. So the first one we'll go over is Twin Oaks, which has been so close to my heart. This is the Hank equivalent at Twin Oaks. He's a trailblazer. This is Shawl, a wise old man of the land who weaves. They just bought more, so I think they're at like 500 acres right now. And he loves a tree, and so so this is definitely your mentor in that one. Yeah, a lot of pagan energy there with the maypole. They have it's not one spirituality, but welcome of many, so they are often doing different ceremonies. They have their reunions every year, and so all the old members are able to come and celebrate together, which is hundreds of people coming who have each shared an experience there.
Including a mermaid.
And and then they swim out of the ponds. And then they have their own. So they have their own lake and sauna and beach that they built, which we'll talk about later, but it's quite extraordinary. So in a nutshell, they are based on the book Walden 2. It's like a manifestation of a philosophy as a community, and they're 52 years old now, so they're basically the oldest non-religious community in the States. And they usually sit at about 90 people living there. One of the incredible things they've done is go to court against the IRS multiple times and legally be registered as a church of equality. And so this allows them to not have to pay any taxes, because this was part of their anti-war protest, was how can we run a community where they had planned for 100 people bringing in hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of dollars for their business, and not be fueling that right into the war machine. And so after many iterations and going to court multiple times, they've now created a very safe way for other communities to also join the 501(b) tax bracket and become a tax-free entity. Part of that is that they all share their income. You make $100 of personal money a month. They have multiple businesses. They do tofu, they do seed growing, they do hammock weaving, they do indexing for textbooks. One of the things I love is that they have the 40 hours of community work a week, right? But that can include things like childcare. It can include a lot of cooking, right? A lot of dish cleaning. A lot of the things that are just the service is also part of it. And what I love they have is called tofu bod. And so one of their businesses is making tofu. And this was cutting edge, right? Because they're in like rural Virginia, and they started this business, I'm not sure, but I would say off the top of my head, definitely at least more than 2 decades ago. And so in rural Virginia, there wasn't a big drive for tofu yet. So they wanted to kind of bring it to this space. But it's hard industrial work. And so for every 3 hours of work you do in the tofu factory, you get 1 hour of massage or other service given to you by another member. And then the other member gains an hour of community hours for doing that. So they have multiple, basically full-time masseuses at the community who just massage everyone who's making tofu. So it's a nice self-care week there. They've been the hub of the community conference for 25 years now, which is just really powerful, like kind of everyone coming together every year from all these different places to skill share on how to build a village. And then what I think is an absolute gem that they do is fascinating. They do a 3-week immersive. So their internship, or their visitor program, excuse me, is a 3-week long course. It's equivalent to like a semester in school, where every day you have 1 to 3 classes that are taught by community members about how their community works. And so you can just learn so much about how to run a communal business and what these various tax things look like and what it's like to raise children in a community. And it's free of charge. They ask for donation because you get fed, but then you also work in the community. So you're kind of like, you're doing your work and you're also getting taught in a place to sleep. And and so a lot of people wanting to start community can go there for the visitor program and leave with wisdom you just couldn't get from a textbook. Challenges and insights. The 40 hours of work a week is a lot. I know, in the 9 to 5, we're used to it, but it can be tough because it's not just Monday through Friday. Sometimes it's also Saturday and Sunday, and you're working 4 hours this day and 6 hours that day. And the community, my experience there is people who are doing full-time work, farming 40 hours a week, the level of exhaustion is they're putting out a lot to get through. Their industrial work with the tofu is really it brings in some of the money they need, but it's still a drain. So there's a lot of energy in the community of wow, we're making money with this business and it keeps us afloat and we believe in the product, but this feels like we're losing. This isn't why we wanted to do community. They have a lot of mediation practices. Like, they are a bureaucratic machine. Like, this community has designed it to be such a beast of bureaucracy that no charismatic person could take it over and no one could sink it. It's like they're like a warship of bureaucracy, which has its benefits because it's like it is going to keep enduring. But they have a lot of policies in there that are not great, and so it taught me a lot about just because you have a policy doesn't mean that it works, and being able to get rid of policies is really important. And then the other sad part is you can work there and be there for years and years, but you're not actually building up equity, and you're not actually building up savings. And so you could spend 10 years at this community and leave with no money in your bank account and no ownership of any property. And so it just can be difficult for people. And then with so many people, once you reach 90 to 100 people, even though it's based on Walden 2 was all about how to create a large village, and Walden 2 was 1,000 people, that's very nimble and can always be reading psychology papers and integrating sociology concepts and be like almost like this cutting edge of interpersonal dynamics, right? But the truth is, once you get to over 90 people and people are raising kids there, and some kids have lived there their whole life and they're now adults living there, it's hard to stay nimble. Like, things start to just get set, and so then things that you don't like as times change, like sexism and racism, can start to be harder and harder to get out. The insights is that they do have a bulletproof bureaucracy, and it's fascinating to see. Once you create that, the turnover of the community, like the people can constantly be changing, but like the organism that is a community continues in a way that's far more enduring than most communities that are so dependent on the individuals that as few as certain people leaves, like the community kind of falls out from under. So it's an interesting strategy. Yeah. They definitely value their ideals in some ways over their members. It's like, we are trying to create a manifestation of equality, and what does that mean? You know, and so there's definitely people I've noticed can often kind of be bumped aside and kicked out of the community if they're getting in the way of this ideology. So it's paradoxical. But one of the best things is that poor can feel incredibly rich. Like, you don't own anything really while you're there, but you own everything, right? So they went to IRS, and when they beat the IRS in that court case, they used the money to then build that pond and build a sauna and put in a beach, and no one owns their own car, but collectively you own 25 cars. So it's this interesting thing of where no one personally owns a lot, but you feel so rich. Like, one of the things they cook, they eat tons of meal together. They have so many great cooks, and they have their own cows that they milk, and they make their own cheese, and they butcher their own cows, and they cook the meat to make the barbecues, and they make a lot of their own furniture. So in many ways, it's like you feel this opulent wealth, even though you don't have any money in your bank account. The next community, Eastbrook, is fascinating. They're much younger, so they're interesting I created an allyship with. They just started in more like 2016. And they're also an income sharing commune with a CSA box. And this is some of the highlights of theirs, just I think is interesting, is they aren't full commune in that everybody, but they're a commune subset. So they have income sharing pods within the whole community. And so that allows some people, I know there's one where it's a kind of a professor and a poet and and two farmers, I believe, are all sharing their income, and then they get to vote collectively from their one bank account where they share it. But when you come to community, you don't have to join that. And so I feel like that's a really approachable way of navigating commune. Oh, commune life, they do a lot, they put out a lot of stuff about what it's like to live in a commune. Like, they write and they make video blogs, and they're doing a lot of work to just share with the world what daily life in a commune is like, and like demystify which I think is incredibly valuable work. They have a CSA business, which it's good for small farming to start up with, about what really sells with their essential oils and their balms, and they work with the farmers market. And so there's a lot of, if we're wondering about how to run a small-scale ag business, they've definitely figured out a way to make it work. They use LEX. I already talked about that, how they did the barn raising using nothing but other communities. And if we get more into farming, I think it's beautiful that they have a furnace in their greenhouse, so even in New York, they're able to farm long into winter and early after the year starts. So, innovation. Now we're Acorn, so this is the anarchist commune in Virginia, which is a very entertaining place to be. They have a lot of, they're always having fun. So there's their goats who are climbing on their car, and they have piglets, and they have cows, and they have chickens. They have it's just the humans and animals all playing and having fun together. And they have a big performance, back one. They have a big performance stage as well, so they host a lot of festivals and such. 30 members, founded in '93. And the interesting is I feel like they're powerful because they're defying what you'd expect with an anarchist community who's running, I think it's probably almost $1 million business, but many hundreds of thousands of dollar business, but without any hierarchy in it. Part of the things they do that I feel like it's such a powerful tool is an annual clearing. They call this a clearness. And so what you have to do, your responsibility as a community member, is to have a one-on-one with every other community member every year about what it's like to live with that person. And so you have to sit down and you just have this private time to just talk about this is what's on edge for you. And to do that with 30 people isn't nothing. That's and then they do that more and more. Once issues arise, people are so good at it, they can more easily be okay, we need to have a clearness. You should organize quickly to talk with everyone because there's tensions coming up. So it's very prioritizing one-on-one healing. They have to embrace the anarchy to make that feasible and not have it fall apart. They have a very thorough membership process. And so that's kind of a cool way they were able to create a thorough process to build the trust in people, and then that allows them, through kind of strong filtering, to then not have to have a lot of rules in the community. And which we should definitely look into, my favorite thing is, one of their contributions is the building code hack. Technically in Virginia, you can build anything as long as you put it as animal housing. They built this, is called the Seed Palace, right? 3 stories tall. The first story is all earthen plaster. It's just this gorgeous building. It's just a whole hodgepodge of natural building YouTube videos piled together. And it wouldn't fit any code, but it's okay because it's animal housing. And now a lot of communities in Virginia use this. So it's a lot of Virginia to now be kind of a spot for pretty innovative building because of the animal code. This is a little example of their membership process. I just think it's beautiful how they create a flow chart. It's pretty minimalistic. We don't have to get into the details, but there's actually multiple. They have another page of the flow chart. And so this is just an example. It's this roadmap to membership that I feel is really accessible. And this is to show that they're kind of our people. That's a baby cow dancing in front of the stage. So, challenges and insights is with the anarchist model, some people do a lot more work than others. And they kind of just have to be at peace that some people's heart song isn't to be doing as much work. But what the amazing thing they've created is Southern Seed Exposure. So this is a company that sells more rare seeds, but what they've done is a lot of these seeds can't be grown near each other, right? So squash, for example, has to be pollinated 7 times before it goes to fruit. And so that means that it has 7 opportunities to be pollinated by another variety of squash, which will mean that it's very hard to keep a pure lineage of an heirloom squash. And so what they've done is they've now allowed communities all around, up and down the East Coast, to grow different varieties of heirloom species and then sell them back to Southern Seed Exposure. So that big seed palace I showed you is the main warehouse where they keep all the seeds. And that's allowed, kind of any community that's starting up can immediately start making income because they'll be okay, great, we need you to make the crafters pumpkins. Can you just grow us a field of crafters pumpkins? Okay, we need you to grow the hibiscus. Can you grow the spotted squash? And they'll just offer communities to grow certain things. And the communities could, if they want, still eat the food, but they just have to take some of it where they extract the seeds and then mail them back. And so it's a really nice community Kickstarter business that a lot of folks are getting to tap into. This is where I live most of the time. This community is super close to my heart. This is Cambia. This is still within the Virginia network. This was our earthen temple. This is where I got the practice of, we held hands before every meal, and always ate together, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and squeezed, when we were done holding, and sometimes we would hold our hands for like minutes. You basically just like drop into meditation, and we did gratitudes at every dinner, and you couldn't talk about anything else until you finished doing your gratitudes. It just was like this community was based on how can we have a community that's founded in platonic love. Like, how can that be our foundation? It's right next to Twin Oaks, which was a community that's much more energized, and how can we be based in like this equality, but not necessarily love one another, but be very like bureaucratically functional. And so we were more like the other side. Okay, so how can we just be based in love and not as much prioritize the bureaucracy? And so they were like kind of little experiments running next to each other. The nutshell is it's 3 to 5 adults. They were also founded 5 years ago. Make their money off of a few different little businesses. And then, even though it's a small amount of adults, there's a constant influx of travelers. They really created this community that's like, probably every month there's another 5 to 10 different travelers coming through who plan to stay for 3 days and then have a life-changing experience and stay for 3 months. And so, even though it's a small crew of people, the amount of lives they've changed is quite high. And this is just like, so there's a crystal, like there's 2 pages of nothing but crystals. It's super creative space, so this is like in the forest, we created like a trampoline that was hanging from the trees, so it was like a swinging trampoline yurt. And we needed more housing, so we just bought an old boat and then renovated it. This one was in a vice, the vice is like they make YouTube videos and stuff, so they came and filmed us making this. That was really fun. So we're on their channel. This is where I lived. I lived up here. I was the gargoyle of the temple up in the top. And this is just one of the community building projects. And then this is what I would love to bring. So this is a wood-fired hot tub. And then it's insulated with bouncy balls from, from like a McDonald's. And yeah, once we get more into an active building, this is a reciprocating group learning center that we built together. Another incredible technology is sunroom. So during winter, kind of build a sunroom up the side of the house. So it's basically a greenhouse, right? But make it compartmentalized, so when summer comes and you don't need that heat anymore, you can just take apart the whole greenhouse and set it in the side yard. And so during winter, we didn't need much heating in the house because the sunroom was just basically a greenhouse that was directly connected to the house. So you open the door, it floods in the heat. This was a Cambia that was converted, ripped out the engine, and just decked it out with batteries and made it into an electric car. And this was for getting around from community to community for people who didn't want to bike. It recently got struck by lightning. But it was like it gets struck, and then the charging cord along the grass was like this just ball of electricity, and then almost blew up the house. But like ran out of energy, right? Things to think about with electric cars. And there, I love inside. Inside is all about one of the guys there. His mom's from Israel. He grew up in a kibbutz. The founder of this community grew up in a kibbutz in Israel, and his mom's an architect, and he's a sociologist. And so we really just creating spaces where they're just so unorthodox, where people just move through the community like it's one big playground, because just dissolving a lot of the assumptions we have of like, there shouldn't be like places to climb in the kitchen. Like, why not? The kitchen should you should totally be able to climb on the walls of the kitchen. So I love that. And then finger books, so the whole community had these tiny little books that were just almost like miniature zines to give a lot of people, like, what the hell is community? So there's a lot of these really bite-sized community education things, and then a big scrapbook to introduce people, and then finally, if we're interested in chickens, my favorite here is that we had a mobile chicken coop. So chickens kind of devastate an area in a loving way, but if you don't move them, they're gonna just turn it into dirt. And so it was great to have these little chickens, and then like after they'd finished clearing an area, you could they'd all go in at night, and you just wouldn't let them out in the morning, and then you could just took them to a new part of the property and set them down and put the cage out. And so it was our mobile chicken coop. It was pretty fun. And then and grew a bunch of edible, there were some edible duckweeds and stuff that grew in the pond, which we showered in. Challenges with this is like, are we a community first or are we a family first? Because so it was founded by a couple with their kid, and there was often these difficult power dynamics to navigate, because in the end, like, it's sometimes if you create a community, there's a time when the founders kind of need to leave, you know, for the community to have a certain level of resilience, but they didn't want to, like, so this power dynamic of like, well, first and foremost, we kind of want it to be a comfortable place to raise our kid, but we want a lot of people to be here, but how much say do they have? Because we want to make sure it's a comfortable place to raise our kid. And so there was a lot of this confusing of like, what is the primary goal? Is it to create a community, or is it to be a small family with a nice place to raise your kid? So that was a challenge. Hyper-eccentric place was like just so fun to be in, but so hard to get people to settle down in. Because there was always this barrier, like, this is really fun to visit, and this is great, but after 3 months, you're kind of like, oh, I kind of just want a more predictable life. You know, people kind of burn out on the fun and want to just have routine, and they want to have things always work, and they love the outdoor shower, but they're also like, oh, but my feet get kind of muddy when I go out there, this is annoying. So it was interesting to see where people fell in love with the space, but so few people stayed and became members. So many started projects, like creativity permitted, but then like a lot of things kind of being 80% done. Making things super creative and out of scraps was awesome, but it made it so that only the person who made it could fix it. So it created this power dynamic where as new people wanted to come in and help, they were always handicapped by being like, whoa, you did like a hose here? And like there's no, you can't find this on the internet how to fix this sink, you know? The beauty, like life transforming though for me and so many people who came was weekly heart circles. That was like one of the non-negotiables of the community was you had to attend the weekly heart circle if you were there. And this was just a space for group healing. And so every week we ground into 2 hours of group healing. And I hope to share more what a heart circle is here, but it's kind of a lot to explain right now. There was a lot of just decadent nudity. Like, it was just great. There was just like so many safe spaces to just be naked and like be very far away from the road. And so I just saw how many people came and kind of at first felt like that was way too exhibitionist for them. And then after a while, they just wanted to be naked every day in the woods. And it's like Virginia, right? So it's like lush. It's like a rainforest. So it's just like lush everywhere and ponds. And so a lot of people were just all of a sudden naked, which I think is beautiful. And the founders are also challenge course leaders. And so they basically created challenge courses throughout the forest. And so this is like, you know, this is me hanging in one of these giant hammocks. Right? It's like a hammock the size of the inside of this building. And you can just have multiple people crawling on it and around it. So that was amazing for me just to see how they created playgrounds in the forest to give people a reason to go to the forest who otherwise might be like, oh, the forest isn't for me. Like, I don't know what to do there. Like, I'm not a nature person. Like, but by creating these playground spaces, people could go out and find their inner child. So I really love that. And then this is was a great hack for keeping food prices down, was they had a massive dehydrator, and you can talk about there's a ton of cool low-tech dehydrator technologies, but basically this allowed them to get food from the food bank, right? Because the food bank had a bunch of extra veggies, like blueberries, right? People like eating Doritos, but the food bank has to throw in the dumpster, like literally, you know, sometimes 100 pounds of blueberries. And it was just like, okay, but the Doritos are all gone. So we were like, that's fine, you can take all the Doritos, but the food bank would give us all their food before they put it in the dumpster. Or we had a choice if we wanted to take it. So with this big dehydrator, you could just dehydrate and make, you know, we just had shelves and shelves and shelves and shelves of all these strange dehydrated things. That kept food down. Childcare was a rotating daily job, so the kids really had like many parents. A big reason I moved there was because I met the kids who live there are just so mind-blowing. It's so refreshing to be around kids who are so liberated and fearless and creative. And so that's what I hope to create. Yeah, that's part of their network. And another really nice hack they did was they created a community business that visitors could come and work in to partially to pay their dues to the community. But also, if you worked extra in the community business, you could take that money home. So a big reason why community visitors stayed longer was they would kind of come for 3 days, and then they're like, wait, like I'm allowed to make money while I'm here. Oh, I'll stay for longer, and that helped our business, and it was this gift to give people who are on their world tour and were having to come to the end of it because they're not a citizen of the States and they couldn't make money, and then it was like, oh, but here's an offer, you can make more money and continue your travels. So that was a really great gift to give. Now I'm going to do just kind of a more quick cover of some of the communities who I think are super inspiring, but we don't have to go into all the details. Living Energy Farm is a petroleum-free village. It's kind of run by like a mad scientist. And you know, they cook their food. They don't have gas, so they're not plugged into the main line. They don't have gas. They don't own any vehicles, and so they can cook their food using this parabolic glass, right? And so it creates a super hot point in the middle, and you just put a pot there and you cook. There's a lot, and we can do it. There's a whole series of ways to cook with nothing but the sun that I learned there. That's really beautiful. This is an example of how they do all their hot water heating, right? Another big parabolic thing that goes through, these are glass vacuum tubes. The water goes in here, and once it heats up, it then goes into the water heater here, so you can heat the community's water with nothing but the sun. They also are solar, but they're not AC, they're direct solar, which is beautiful. So it's a lot more like your tools work when the sun's out, and they work really strong when the sun's really out, and they work less strong when the sun's less out. So even though it's electricity, it's very connected, and so all their tools were run kind of on like a master drive shaft, and you would just like hook up your saw to the master drive shaft, and then it would power it. And yeah, it's just a unique experience to be using solar, but using solar based on how much sun is out. And then they heat the whole house with just sun heat boxes, like black boxes full of air, right? And then you just put all those on the roof, and they heat up in the sun, and the air heats up in the sun, and then you bring that into the house. So during the winter, they didn't need any fire heating. Like they lit their furnace for like popcorn night, but they didn't actually need their wood fire at all. They heat their whole house with just nothing but these heat trap boxes. And he's passionate that fruits can save the world, so all the children of the community are named after different varieties of persimmon. And then this is one of my mentors. This is like absolute life-changing experience. This is Possibility Alliance, which is next level from that. So there's no electricity at all. I helped them move into their new place in Maine, and we had to tear out all the solar and the wiring. So there's no electricity, there's no petroleum. The house is totally lit with just candles, no cell phones, no computers. And it's such a powerful experience to live in a place like that. And they still do so much. Like when they were in Missouri, you know, their whole website is just a drawing of a piece of paper scanned. and they would still have 1,500 visitors a year coming to their permaculture school, and they did no publicity. And you know, they're in like nowhere Missouri, and they still just had that. They were like, it was such a life-changing experience for people that the word of mouth was incredibly powerful. And these are their superhero bike tours. So they just go, it's a place of radical service. So they go on these bike tours, they dress as superheroes, and they just look for people to help as they go. You know, and they're like, oh, can I help you carry your groceries? He's like, yeah. And they go into the government buildings. They're like, is it anyone's birthday? We want to sing them happy birthday. And they just travel, and they won't bring me food. They'll just know that the abundance will be there for them. They won't know where they're going. They'll just know that they'll find a place to stay. And they just dress like superheroes and help as many people as they can as they can. So it's definitely led by this is, I would call like a charismatic leader. This is Ethan Hughes, and he's an incredible, like the work he's doing now is incredible, and my heart is absolutely broken because the phase of this community now is in kind of falling. It's not growing because his Lyme disease is so devastating now. He just can't even get out of bed. And so it's heartbreaking for this mentor and leader and inspirer and friend of mine, and now to see him bedridden for months. And yeah, so this radical project is kind of dying. Another one that is a great ally we talked to yesterday, Dancing Rabbit. This one's in Missouri. There's no building codes in Missouri, so they've become a hub of innovative mud housing, cob, and all this jazz. And one of the things I think we can glean from them, they're also part of a network of communities who have their own currency, which is really nice, a legally acknowledged currency called the elm, so they don't have to exchange dollars, they can just exchange their elm tokens. But if you ever want to exchange your elm tokens for real money, you can take them to the local bank and get real money back, but otherwise you can just live within your own currency. And they're also in a land trust model, which is really interesting, so you don't actually own any of the land. You have to rent the land that your house is on, but it's like $30 a year. And then you own the house on top of it. So a lot of people can work there and build a beautiful house, and then eventually when it shifts, they can still sell their house. But without selling the land, the community still owns the land. So this is, once we get more into ownership models, that they have, this has worked really well for them. Yeah, that's about all. Now, lessons from the road. So this is just a few nuggets of things I've learned from the wander that I want to kind of share from the School of Hard Community Knox. This is a very famous quotation that people usually don't read all of. They just read this percentage. This is the only thing that usually gets out. 90% of new communities fail. That's usually the entire quote. And people forget to read like all the rest of the quote and then the book. This is Diana Leaf Christian. She lives at Earth Haven in North Carolina. Another elder who's very wise. Community does involve psychology stuff, which in my opinion is why roughly 90% of new communities fail. Forming a community is deeply psychological. Emotional pain and hidden expectations exert a powerful pull on people, and community founders are no exception. So what I've noticed so often, I've seen so many communities crumble and struggle, and a lot of this is kind of, they fall apart from the inside out. And so one of the things I've noticed is a lot of times shiny projects, a community can be in a spot where they're like still getting to know each other, or maybe there is tension, and they're like, oh, well, if we just build this incredible thing, this will bring us together. It's like, let's take on this super difficult project, and that'll help us get along. And I've heard that compared to like, oh, our relationship is kind of on the rocks, we should have a baby. And then we'll fall in love again. And it's kind of like, that's a strange order of things. But yeah, it's just really, as you take on bigger projects together, make sure you're simultaneously taking on these like tangible, showy, expensive things, and like buttressing them with deep heart work to stay interconnected and emotionally strong as you're also building the exterior stuff. Work on your compassion muscles till you're ripped. I saw y'all out there today, and I was like, yes, these people love getting ripped. Now we're ready to like get our hearts ripped too. A lot of the work is just like building up your compassion muscles so you can just be like a creature of love. Like definitely, community is a spot to like expand your capacity to love. Conflict resolution is something that there's a lot of skills for, and the more that we can practice it on little levels, the more that we can practice like, and there's so many ways to do it, but I just see that every time we are honestly sharing when a tension is coming up with us is a gift to get us to know ourselves better and to practice these tools for when the shit really does hit the fan. Because it's hard to learn them when you are fully triggered and you've never tried them before. Emotional hygiene, that's like the heart circle stuff. So there's a lot of just checking in with people on a steady basis so people aren't stuffing things under that are slowly like fermenting until they explode. And then here's heaps of tools that we can use, and we have mentors in, and I've found really effective, from heart circles, transparency tools, internal family systems, nonviolent communication, authentic relating, men and women's circles, and Zeg, which was developed at Zeg, which is a commune in Germany. Next lesson from the road. Once one knows with whom it is important to check before a decision is made, and whose approval is the stamp of acceptance, one knows who is running things. Joffrey. Tyranny of the structurelessness. So she was a writer during the suffragette movement, and was noticing the patterns within that movement. And so this is really around like, what's our governance here? Like, who is running this place? Because when there's a lot of beautiful time when it's just like people are together and they're just loving each other and they're creating this thing, but then if you stay in that phase for a long time, eventually usually you do start to create these shadow power structures, and there's people are, you know who you're supposed to ask, but it's not official. And this is two things. It can make people less committed to the community, right? People come and they'll be excited about it and they'll love it, but they have trouble really like putting all their eggs in, because somewhere in them they're kind of like, I just don't know if I trust. Like that, I can't see, I don't know how I'm safe in this. Like I can feel there's a lot of social dynamics and I don't know how to find safety. And so the membership won't follow. And this is also what you can do is just really keep the community vision and mission alive, because sometimes that can be what's guiding the community, right? As opposed to just these couple people, but if you have a community vision that you're like every year reassessing and every year pouring love into and making sure that everyone is deeply moved by what this mission and vision is, then they can, the mission and vision can in many ways have a more powerful leadership position. This was the gradient between protocol and trust. Yes, it's kind of what I mentioned earlier, is that a lot of times in community, when a challenge comes, you have to decide, like, we could create a protocol around this and just make more bureaucracy, like Twin Oaks style. Twin Oaks style would definitely be, let's create more bureaucracy. Like, this issue happened, let's make a pattern so that if it happens again, it's not like a law book of how you should deal with it. But then another option is like, maybe we should just go on a retreat together and spend a week getting to know who we really are, and then that little shit won't bother me. And so you could go the other direction and be like, actually, I feel like we don't need more protocols, we just need more heartfelt connection. So that's a good question to ask yourself. And sociocracy is amazing. Diana Lee Christian teaches on that, and I have a lot of great mentors in that. And Teal from Reinventing Organizations and Regenerative Organizations. These are a lot of tools of like having bureaucracy feel awesome, like having governance feel fun and empowering, and like able to bring your whole heart and your whole emotional being and confusing state to a decision. Because we want all of you there. You know, we don't just want your head there. Last lesson from the road is that the next enlightened being will be a community. That's not the exact quote, I couldn't find it. But it's almost a Thich Nhat Hanh quote. So it's like, it's the essence of a Thich Nhat Hanh quote. He's a Buddhist, as a monk, and the founder of Plum Village, which is a community in France, and speaks a lot about how like the Sangha, like the next step in our spiritual path is community of interdependent beings. And to keep growing spiritually, you need to grow with others. So this is the power of spirit. Like I've really noticed that a lot of the longer lasting communities have some level of spirituality, like some higher purpose that you're moving towards. Because if you're just moving towards like just having a nice life, when things get hard, a nice life will often mean leaving. Like if you don't have a deeper calling as to why you're going through this journey together, then it can often be tempting to just walk away from it. So I've noticed there's a lot of ways of having a spiritual leader. Charismatic leaders aren't all bad. Like some communities do really well by having this charisma, this spiritual guru, and it goes well if they're able to be a guru when they're in their prime, and then once the village is created, kind of like fade out. And so I've had a new appreciation, not necessarily for cults, but for like the power of a good guru. Consistent ceremony is really I've noticed when you can weave it into every meal or every week or every month or multiple times a year. Like there's beautiful community in maybe in Oregon or Washington. They're right on the border. I think they'd be in Oregon. They're called Try on Life, and the founders there are very witchy and very activist oriented as well. They've now created a whole year of spiritual traditions. And so every year, every month, they're either building up to a ceremony or coming down from a ceremony. So they're either preparing or processing. And they've like just created this together out of what feels most alive. And I find that very, very inspiring. So some of the tools for creating spirit together can be the grief rituals, so we can process and scream and let things out together. We can have a communal temple, right, where it's a sacred space to express a lot of different meaningful things, but is a container for authentic spirituality. And as I said, you can invent your own. Like we can ride on the shoulders of ancestors and create new traditions. That's all for this presentation. The future topics I'd still be excited about is ownership models, strategies for keeping food down, and eco-business. I like doing that, talking about all the different ways communities can run businesses. Without positive obsession, there's nothing at all.